Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I'm Laquita, a certified risk adjustment coder, working from home with 3 certifications from the AAPC. This video has been highly requested for a time, and today we're going to tackle 10 multiple choice questions focused on risk adjustment coding. They're pretty easy, not too hard for the newbies. If they seem hard for you, let me know in the comment section. Very important detail about these questions is that they're not full code capture. If it risk adjusts using the HCC model, V24, V28, or V08, we're capturing those codes only. If it doesn't risk adjust with no value in the V24, V28, or V08 fields, we're not coding. All places of employment are not one and the same. Some are full code capture and some are not full code capture. There is a link in the description box below for you to download your own copy of the HCC risk adjustment model we're using today. You're going to use your ICD-10 book only. Use Google to help you figure out what a condition is for research purposes only if you need to for more clarity, since we have that resource at our fingertips. Don't use Google for coding as it's not a reliable source. You must use your ICD-10 book for the medical coding we're performing together today. Follow along with me in my ICD-10 book for observation, or test yourself to find the answers on your own. The first 3 questions will have a tip at the bottom to help you out. The remaining 7 will not have any coding tips. Now that we got the rules out of the way, let's begin. Okay, you guys, we're on question 1, and this one is pretty light. So the question is, at what age do individuals typically become eligible for Medicare? And we must take note of the tip at the bottom. This is a research exercise. Use your search engine of choice for direction. We have 4 answer choices here. We have A, 60, B, 65, C, 70, D, 55. And the answer is B, 65. Let's move on to the next question. All right, for my newbies, yes, this is more information, but do not let it intimidate you. We're going to go through this together. A patient presents with DM treated with Humalog. The provider performed a PAD test due to constant leg numbness. The test confirmed PAD. Provider diagnosed the patient with PAD. What codes should be reported? So for those of you who want to find out on your own, go ahead and pause the video. There's a tip at the bottom. Please take your time and be careful. There is a causal relationship here you must consider. So let's look at the things in this that sticks out to us. So first off, the patient has DM, which is diabetes. It is treated with Humalog. Humalog is insulin. That's very important here. The provider performed a PAD test, and then the patient was diagnosed with PAD. So in this situation, we need to go look up diabetes in the index, in the alphabetic index. So here's my ICD-10 book right here. I have the Optum version. There are different versions of ICD-10 I've used this the most, and also Cara book. But we're going to go to the alphabetic index. So in here, this is the alphabetic index. We're going to scroll to, we're going to flip to diabetes. And that's right in the front. So I'm going to go to the beginning. For my newbies, I already know the codes for all of this, but let's follow along. So we have diabetes here, and the code is E119. There are 2 types of diabetes. You have type 1 and you have type 2. Whenever the provider does not specify if they have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, you always default to type 2. So this patient here has type 2 diabetes. And when you scroll down and you go to the end right here, well, not to the end, but on this next page here, you see type 2. E119. They also diagnosed the patient with PAD. So your next rule of thumb, you might go over and flip to PAD. So now we're going to go over to PAD. That's peripheral arterial disease. Let's go and look for that. So we're going to look for disease. We're going to flip to disease. So we have disease right here. It also says see also syndrome, but we don't have to do that. So we're going to go look for arterial. And right here, you have arterial. And then when you go down a little more, you see peripheral, I-739. That's the code for PAD. But remember, the tip said there's a causal relationship here that you must consider. So we're going to go back over to diabetes, type 2. And right here, well, let's go to the front because I want you to see it all in its fullness. So we have type 2 diabetes. And right here we says with. It says with. So let's expound on the term with, in, and due to. There are times you're going to see that in your alphabetic index. So you see with here. Let's flip over. Let's look for other examples. We're on diabetes, but I want you guys to see this. You see how it says due to here. You see due to over here. And right here it says in. So I want to show y'all that example before I explain what with, in, and due to means. In your ICD-10 code book, there are a set of guidelines included in your book that's right before the index. And right here, it explains the term with. And we're going to read right from that definition. So it says with. The word with or in should be interpreted to mean associated with or due to. When it appears in a code title, the alphabetic index, either under a main term or subterm, or in instructional notes in the tabular list. The classification presumes a causal relationship between the two conditions linked by these terms in the alphabetic index or tabular list. These conditions should be coded as related, even in the absence of provider documentation explicitly linking them, unless the documentation clearly states the conditions are unrelated or when another guideline exists that specifically requires a documented linkage between two conditions. To further explain this, if the provider would have stated that the patient has DM and that is not associated with PAD, then you will be coding E119 and I739 separately. The provider did not say that the conditions are unrelated. So that's how we can assume a causal relationship between both of these conditions. The patient has DM, and as a result of the DM, there is a manifestation of PAD. So that means we can code those conditions using a combo code, and that will be E1151. So if you chose E1151, you are correct. Let's look for it in the index. So we have type 2 E119 and we have with. So we're going to go and look for PAD, and it's not in this list. So we're going to flip over and we're going to look for it. And there it goes. Peripheral angiopathy. The code is E1151. The provider did not specify if they had gangrene, so we would not be coding E1152. We will be coding E1151. But I left off something to trip you guys up. The answer is not just E1151. The answer is actually D. It is not C. And the reason it's D is because we have to take the insulin into account. That risk adjusts on the form that I told you guys to utilize. So you must code E1151 and also Z794 as well. So if you got that right, congratulations. You passed this question. Good job. Now let's move on to the next one. Okay, this is pretty easy. So how many organs are located in the thoracic cavity? Tip, this is a research exercise. Use your search engine of choice for direction. Go ahead and pause to find your answers, but we're going to go ahead and move along in the video for those who are following along. And the answer is 5. When you research this thoroughly on your search engine of choice, you will come to find that there are 5 organs located in the thoracic cavity. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, this one is pretty easy. What is the diagnosis code for HTN? Go ahead and pause the video and we're going to move along for people who are following along. HTN is hypertension. Let's go over to the alphabetic index and go to the H's and look up hypertension. Okay. There we go. And we have hypertension here, and the code is I10. So you guys, I'm so used to coding that I know that those codes are correct that we just did for PAD with DM, but you also want to put into practice of going to the code level as well. just to make sure that everything is good. So we have here hypertension. If the answer you have is I-10, C, you are correct. But let's go look at this at the code level. So we're going to flip over here and go to I-10. There we go. So essential hypertension, and there it goes here. You see it here. The provider diagnosed hypertension, and that is I-10. The provider diagnosed the patient with the following conditions: hypertension, heart failure, diabetes, and GERD. Provider also linked proper treatment for each diagnosed condition mentioned. What codes are you reporting? So this is an example of you looking at a healthcare record, and the provider diagnosed the patient with all these conditions and also provide some type of support, whether it's a medication. You have the support to code all of these conditions in a perfect world. So you must go and look in your index for HTN, HF, that's heart failure. Diabetes, you know we're going to go ahead and go to type 2 DM. So any question that you see here that has E10, you know it's not the proper DM code because that is type 1. We have to go to the default code of type 2 since the provider did not specify if it was type 2 or type 1 DM. Any answer choice you see with E10, go ahead and cross it out. Remember, this is not full code capture. You are only capturing the conditions that risk adjust. Previously, we determined that the hypertension code is I-10. Let's go ahead and look up heart failure. You're going to start in your index with failure. All right. So failure. Okay. Too far. So here we go. Here's failure. We have failure here. So we're looking up heart failure. So we have failure. So let's go ahead and scroll to heart. And as you can see, you see heart here. And that's I50.9. But do not move too fast. There is a causal relationship that we have to consider between heart failure and hypertension. We got to look at the width. So we have heart, I509, width. Let's go ahead and go down to hypertension, and it's going to be here. Right here. It says hypertensive. So follow the book. It says see hypertension, heart. Hypertension, heart. Let's go back to hypertension. Hypertension, hypertensive, heart. Oh, we're right on it. So right here, it says I119, but the patient has heart failure. So with heart failure, I110. Let's go to that code level. And you won't have to always do this when you're coding because you might be looking at this and like, how am I going to do this for everything? It's not like this not in my world anyway. Alrighty, so I110. See, it says hypertensive heart failure hypertensive heart disease with heart failure. Hypertensive heart failure. Look at this note here. This is very important to read. It says use additional code to identify type of heart failure. I50. So with heart failure, the code is I509. We have to include that code as well. For the sake of the video, I can't go look at all of the codes at the code level, but I do expect for you to do that if you are wanting to learn coding. So go ahead and flip over to I509 and read those coding details on your own. But for the sake of the video, I'm trying to keep it not too long. I feel like it's already going to be long already. So we have the codes. So we know for sure that we're coding I110 and I50.9. And we already know that we have to default to type 2 diabetes. We know that answer A is not the choice because it has type 1 DM. We know that the answer is not I10 because we have to take into account the hypertension and the heart failure. So we know that C is not the answer because it only has the plain hypertension code listed there. So we must choose between answer B and answer D. We know that the type 2 DM code is diabetes. There is no causal relationship between DM and none of the codes that are diagnosed. So the code is actually E119. Now we must look at is GERD. There we go. GERD. The code is K219. So what answer choice are you coding? Are you coding B or C? And the answer is D. The reason that we are not including GERD, I know that GERD is diagnosed and supported, But remember, I stated that we are not doing full code capture. GERD does not risk adjust. So we're not worrying about coding the K219 unless you work somewhere where they are concerned with full code capture. They want you to code everything ICD-10-CM, whether it risk adjusts or not. Then you will be including GERD. The answer choice for you would be B. You should code B because you have to include the GERD. I have worked at more than one place where it was not full code capture. I have worked at places where it was full code capture. Since we're not doing full code capture, you will be coding D in this situation. Remember that. Let's move on to the next one. Which risk adjustment model is typically used for Medicaid insurance holders? And the answer is B, CDPS. That is the model that you will be using if you are coding Medicaid charts. If you're coding Medicare charts, then you will be using the HCC model like we're using for all of our questions. I decided to have all of the questions that we are doing to be focused on the HCC risk adjustment model. I put this here to kind of try to trip you guys up, but if you go over to Google and you Google this, you will be able to find that answer. Let's move on. Which code set is used by risk adjustment coders? This one is pretty easy. Which one will you be choosing? And the answer is ICD-10-CM. If you answered C, you are correct. Let's move on. What is medical coding? This is really easy. You should not get this wrong. Which one are you choosing? A, translating a medical record into numeric codes. B, translating a medical record into alphanumeric codes. And if you answered B, you are correct. All right, you guys. So do not let this intimidate you. All that you are going to be doing is looking at the information that pops out at you, and that's all you're going to worry about. This is really simple. So I put what codes should be reported. You're going to look at this medical record and you're going to analyze this record. Now, this is an example of like a medical record. Unless you're coding for a company that is IHA focused, where they have a standardized form, this is a bit different. And we're going to expound on this in other videos so you guys can understand what I'm saying. But this is an example of a medical record that I made up. What's important here is that we have to look at the encounter date. So this patient, basically this is the date of the office visit, January 1st, 2024. We have the patient name, antibody. We have the patient's date of birth up there. We also have the provider, Dr. Jason R. Chartwell, MD. And the insurance provider is, of course, Medicare. We're using the HCC risk adjustment model. Let's look at the chief complaint. The patient presented into the office visit with a complaint of shortness of breath. This is patient reported. It's just like you going to the doctor. You have this nagging cough you've been having for a month and you don't know why you have this cough. You're going to your doctor saying, I have a cough. That's patient reported. You do not code patient reported diagnosis. You have to code it according to what the provider states, what the provider diagnoses the patient with. Let's look at the past medical history. So the doctor went over the medical history with this patient. It says reviewed. It's saying that she has a past medical history of GERD. We have the surgical history. We have the vitals. That means that the doctor actually checked this person's blood pressure, got their height, got their weight, and got their BMI. That's how you know that it is a face-to-face visit. This was not virtual, because you cannot get vitals if it's like a telephonic visit. We have the physical exam. Doctor states that the patient has a general appearance of looking healthy. We have the reviewed medications, meaning that the provider reviewed the meds that this patient is on. Vitamin D3 and pantoprazole. I know it says past medical history of GERD, but the fact that this patient is on pantoprazole most likely is treating that GERD, but we have to have the doctor spell those things out. No assumptions here. The review of symptoms are all negative. We have review problems. This patient most likely has GERD. I know it says past medical history, but you also see it in review problems. You also see that med there. But like I said, let the doctor diagnose the patient, not you. You're the coder. You're not the doctor. We have the family history review, the DM2. We have the HPI here, history of present illness. Provider states a 75-year-old male presents to the ED with shortness of breath. No known allergies, and this patient do not drink alcohol. The assessment in the plan. To explain this, the provider assessed the patient and then came up with a plan to treat this patient for the condition that they diagnosed him with. Provider states, I assessed the lungs and performed an x-ray. A spirometry test was performed as well. Based on the lung imaging and spirometry test, patient has COPD. They prescribed the patient a steroid to manage the COPD. Discharged the same day, no need to hospitalize. And we also have the encounter is signed off by the doctor. We also have the credential of that doctor, MD, the date, and also the time. This medical record is good to code from. It must be signed off. We have to have that information. And also, my seasoned coders here. Anything that I'm missing, also please include in the comment section to help other coders as well, you guys. So here, what will you be coding based off this record? We know that the patient has shortness of breath. We see GERD on this record, and we also see COPD. What did the provider diagnose the patient with? Also, does that condition risk adjust? And we also have an option for none of the above. What's your answer? And if you answered J449, you are correct. That is the code that we are supposed to be coding. COPD is an acronym for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Let's go look that up. We're going to go to disease again. Now, let's go to pulmonary. We have pulmonary here. Let's look at this note. We have to follow this. It says, see also disease lung. We're already in disease, so let's go to lung. We have lung right here. It says J9A4, but that is not our code. Remember, it's chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Go down. There goes obstructive. There's your code right there, J449. Also, flip over to the code level to read more about that code on your own. So congratulations. If you selected D, you did a great job. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this one is a little bit harder. I want to try to challenge you guys a bit. If you are new, do not let this intimidate you. You have the ability to figure this out. Just take your time, pause this video, and find your answer and read, look up those codes, and then go to the code level. You should be able to get this right. So what codes should be reported? Right here, we have all the same kind of information that we had in the last record, so we're not going to just go over all of that. So we have everything that we need, I can assure you, that to code from this record. This patient presented for a med refill. They came in to refill their meds. We have the past medical history reviewed here of hyperlipidemia, that's HLD. We have HTN, hypertension, and we have CAD here reviewed. We also have reviewed problems, meaning these are the problems that this patient has right now presented in my office. These are the conditions that this patient has: GERD, heart failure, and HTN. Now, let's read the HPI. We have a 73-year-old male presents today for med refills. Patient advised that he has no med refills left. The doctor expressed the dangers of not taking his meds timely to manage his conditions. The patient has been out of their meds for 2 months, and the patient presented the empty bottles to the provider. And the patient also complains of shortness of breath, dizziness, and sour stomach. So the assessment in the plan states that the provider stated, I forwarded med prescriptions electronically to patient's pharmacy. HTN is being treated with lisinopril. HLD is being treated with a statin. The CAD is being treated with nitroglycerin. And the GERD is being treated with a GERD med. And the heart failure is being treated with valsartan. Remember, I want you guys to get this right. Remember, we are only coding what risk adjusts. Remember, if we're only coding what risk adjusts, that means it's not full code capture. If it does not risk adjust, we're not coding it. You already know what the code is for HTN and heart failure. Remember that. We're not going to flip through the book on this last one. I want you guys to do that. Since we've already looked up HTN and heart failure, we know the codes for that. So I'm not going to go look that up on video. We know what GERD is, and we know it's not full code capture. We're not even worried about the GERD, so we're not going to go look that up. So now I'm going to go look up HLD, hyperlipidemia, and CAD. Let's look up CAD first, since we're already in disease. Now, the definition of CAD is coronary artery disease. You should have utilized Google to figure that part out. So since we're in disease, we're going to go and look up artery. Alrighty, we're close. There we go. So we have artery. See also disease, arterial. That's not our code. Look down. It says coronary, I2510. That is our code. Angina was not specified, so we're not going to be including angina. We're going to be coding I2510. Flip to the code level to read more about I2510, but we're not going to do that right now. So now that we have that, let's look up hyperlipidemia. So the code for hyperlipidemia is E78.5. The correct answer is D. This video has now come to an end, and I do apologize for the length of this video. And for future videos, I would rather do maybe 5 coding questions. That way we can go to each code level and review those codes. I have to reiterate, especially to my new coders, my seasoned coders know this. When you're looking up a code, you have to go to that code level to see if you can find any instructional notes there. It's very, very important. But for the sake of this video, I didn't do that each time because I didn't want the video to be long. And look, it's long. But I hope that you all enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you. Bye, you guys.